Florida has cleared the way for another execution set for tonight, 6 o'clock at the state prison near Stark. James Ernest Hitchcock is the inmate. He's been on death row since 1977. He was convicted of beating and choking his 13-year-old stepniece to death back in 1976. That came in the moments after an alleged rape as well. Just disturbing details out of this case, and that suspect, that defendant, who was convicted of those crimes, I should clarify, is set to be put to death later today. And so joining us live now to talk about this case, we've got the former Chief Judge of the Ninth Judicial Circuit, that would be Judge Belvin Perry, joining us live now via Zoom. Judge, we appreciate you joining us today here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Glad to be here.
First, this is a case that has been going on for decades now. Judge, just kind of give me your reaction to hearing the news and the execution that is now scheduled for tonight.
Well, justice will finally be served in this particular case involving Hitchcock. I sat second chair on one of his first resentencing hearings back in the mid-'80s after his death warrant had been signed in 1983. So I was involved as a prosecutor in one of his many resentencing cases.
With that perspective, what do you remember about this case? What stood out to you about it? What still stands out to you about it all these years later?
Well, number one, you never can get used to the fact that a child of 13 years of age, was brutally assaulted, raped, and then murdered. The defendant, Mr. Hitchcock, at the time confessed. Then he tried to take that confession back and put the crime on a relative of his, the stepfather of the victim. In this case, it's gone back and forth. It shows that the justice system sometimes is very slow. And this case should have concluded many years ago. And finally, justice is being served to bring closure to this family.
Judge, why did this take so long? If this is something, I do, you talk about it going back and forth. Still, I mean, this is a case where he was convicted in 1977. How is it now that we're talking, 50 years and that he's spent on death row before being executed tonight?
Well, number one were the numerous appeals. There were some errors that the U.S. Supreme Court found on at least 2 occasions that sent it back for resentencing. I can remember when I was involved in his previous resentencing around 84, 85, he brought 8 inmates from death row as character witnesses for him in that particular trial. And that was one of the errors, I think, along the way that subsequent counsel made an issue out of an appeal. The problem was that once all the appeals were over with, no one signed the death warrant. And it takes a death warrant to be signed by the governor to do that, or the attorney general. If the governor fails to ask for a death warrant, the attorney general can petition the Supreme Court to issue a death warrant.
Judge, you talk about the death row inmates that he wanted to be called as character witnesses. I know you have seen a lot in your legal career. Had you seen anything like that?
I would never forget that as long as I live. One of the questions I asked of them on cross-examination was, where do you live? And they answered, death row. And then I asked them a series of other questions. And then I asked them, were you are you in favor or against the death penalty? And of course, they said they were against the death penalty. And the last question I asked, was it before or after you arrived on death row that you were against the death penalty?
What's going on in the courtroom at that point? I mean, I've not heard of anything like that happening before. That's certainly an interesting wrinkle in this case.
It was an interesting wrinkle. It was an interesting wrinkle when they closed down portions of downtown. When they transported them into the old Orange County Jail, the top of the old courthouse, to house them till they testified the next day. And they were transported. They had a caravan of prison vans followed by law enforcement. And when they unloaded them, there were numerous deputies with shotguns and other type of long rifles to make sure they didn't try to escape.
Wow, I can only imagine what that scene was like. And like you said, you believe that probably didn't really help his argument in this.
You're right. I mean, it was a long time coming, and justice will finally be served in this case. And the one thing about this governor, he is finally trying to make sure that justice is done by signing death warrants on individuals that have exhausted all of their appeals rather than let them sit forever.
Yeah, I'm curious about that from your perspective and kind of what the the fallout is of having cases like these that draw on for years and years, and then even after their appeals. I don't think anyone is saying they don't deserve their due process, because they certainly do, and they are entitled to that. But there still comes a time where those things seem to have been exhausted, and yet we still see a long length of time. What, from your perspective and your dealings with victims and others, what the impact of cases taking 50 years? What's the fallout of that?
The major fallout is that the victims' families don't have closure because they know that the person is still alive, that there's a possibility that despite the fact that all appeals have been exhausted, there's nothing to stop him from filing another motion. And we saw when the death warrant was filed in this case, there was another motion to stop his execution. This brings back finality in his case, and it brings closure to the victim's family.
Yeah. What I would imagine on a day like this, as you're kind of thinking about this case, that's probably is a big focus of your thoughts. This family that has been through so much, and has waited so many years for the justice that they were promised years ago.
Justice has a beginning point, and justice should have a final point. And if a jury recommends death and the judge imposes death, and all the appellate remedies have been exhausted, and they should be exhausted within a reasonable period of time. In my mind, it's no reason why these cases, after the final case and sentence has been imposed, in a range of 5 to 7 years, you should be able to do what you need to do in terms of the appellate process, and justice should take its course if the case was not reversed in the appellate process.
Judge Perry, last thing I will ask you here, as someone who was part of the prosecution, at one point in this, what would you, if you had the chance to speak with James Ernest Hitchcock today ahead of his execution scheduled for tonight, what would you say to him?
I would say to Mr. Hitchcock, that he needs to make peace with his maker.
Right. Belvin Perry, former Chief Judge of the Ninth Judicial Circuit. We appreciate you joining us and talking about this case with us. We always appreciate your time and your expertise, and thanks so much for joining.